the brain is just reacting to those chemicals of that type not being there, isn't it? Even if, you know, whether the, as you say, whether the actual drugs are doing them any good or not, you're still going to get that change in as they come off them.
I think so. There seemed to be a sort of a 3-day period of an immediate problem, almost flu-like symptoms and some difficulties. And then more of a normal period, but then a gradual recovery of facility. And when we came down from this 150 milligram level twice a day, we came down to 150 milligrams once a day, because they were all the tablets, that was the medication I had. And because the consultant wasn't cooperative, then it was difficult to go back and say, well, can you give me some smaller versions of it?
So, what did you actually sit at the very beginning, Malcolm, and say, this is what we're going to do? Or did you say, right, I'm going to monitor the levels and see what her responses are? Did you do it on sort of a day-to-day, week-to-week level, or did you have a kind of a long-term, quite clear goal of the amount of time it would get you to, you know, the amount of time it would take to come off them completely?
No, I didn't have a long-term goal. When I went to the Minefield seminar, going back even further, I remember the chap, Joe Griffin, saying how he got somebody who was really seriously ill with depression, how he got them off tablets in a year. And in my mind, at Christmas, I set myself that target, that regardless of everything else that was going on, if Carolyn was ill on the tablets, we may as well be ill off them as be ill on them. And I give myself a year to work my way down. And I'd actually got some advice from a drug rehab clinic in Bristol that said, make a small dose and hold it for 6 weeks. And I thought, oh, at that rate, it's going to take forever. So I decided that I would try and learn more to make it a quicker process. So in doing it, what I actually started doing was I plotted out the half-life curves of the different drugs, and then I started just adding up the amount of the drug left in Carolyn's body from each one she'd taken, which is a relatively simple thing to do. You can just say, well, there's a tablet here from a day ago, there's one from 2 days ago, and you can add up the amount. And I started plotting that out. And just to see then, as we went along, what a given change would do. So I might have 2 or 3 scenarios and say, well, if I do this, this is the rate at which it comes down. If I do it in a different way, it might come down more quickly. And then based on what we'd done, I'd choose a scenario and see how it went for 2 or 3 days.
And there were almost immediate positive results, weren't there, once you'd come through that sort of few days withdrawal, and that's when we used to work together, wasn't it? Caroline and I would generally tend to work together to precipitate that kind of time, just to give her a boost and feeling a bit better during that period. Yes,
that's right. We tended to focus the sessions sort of 5 or 6 days afterwards. So just when she was at the worst, she probably wasn't the most receptive. But then when she got over not having it, but she was at her lowest because she hadn't got that medication anymore, then we focused the sessions then.
We made a few tapes, I think, as well, didn't we,
to we listened,
use at home?
We listened to the relaxation tapes every day. Sometimes she'd listen to both sides. So both ones you made and ones from Uncommon Knowledge. And they were really, really helpful, extremely helpful in actually achieving this low level of this level of calm every day. And then she'd come back up again, but we did seem to start making progress. And at the same time, coming down to half levels of half the medication that we've been on, which we achieved in about a month. Her head started to clear. She actually felt like she could function a little bit again. I mean, she wasn't operating normally, but she felt as though she could actually function. And we just had the tail end of the antipsychotic at that time. And we'd planned to go away, in fact, to a rugby cup final. And she was well enough, we hadn't been away, we hadn't done anything, but she was well enough to go away for a long weekend.
And that was one of her goals, wasn't it,
that was
at the very
goal,
beginning, to just be able to go away for a night and not to worry and get all... Well, I mean, she couldn't have done it before, could she?
No, because the previous year we'd been to Edinburgh, I'd gone, and she hadn't been well enough to...
You could really begin to see huge differences. I know at one point, I think I didn't see her for about 3 weeks. I think I was away, and then you'd had that weekend. away, and I was absolutely staggered at the difference just in that very short space of time. That sort of mental fog seemed to have lifted, and she had a much brighter look about her and was much more chatty and optimistic, while still very aware that she wasn't well and had problems, and the levels of anxiety were still there at certain times. But there was a much more of an optimistic outlook, wasn't there, in terms of that wellness?
Yeah, it was quite an interesting crossroads, because we'd started getting the GP involved, who I now went to prescribe the medication, and he was happy to. He didn't know, so basically he just said, tell me what you want and I'll give you the medication that you want. So he was now on board, so he was cooperating with us. The consultant we saw at about exactly this time when we were going away, and he said, my goodness me, you are looking so much better. Why is that? And the answer was, well, it's because we've stopped taking after half the medication that you gave us. And he said, oh, no, you're obviously better. Therefore, you need to keep this medication level as it is now. And although I said, but you don't understand, we think it's the medication that was making us ill, or keeping us ill. I'm not saying it was the medication that made her ill in the first place, because obviously it wasn't, but he just didn't embrace the fact that that was the case, even though the GP did.
But he's become subsequently very, very interested in what you've done, haven't you? Isn't he? You know?
Well, the consultant wasn't particularly. Well, he was, but which was, I think, is a bit of a shame for all those people who carry on seeing him. But the doctor was. So he supported us in this period when the GP was saying, when the consultant was saying keep the medication as it is, the GP was saying, oh well, just keep at it and let me know how you get on. And so I spoke to him a couple of times and told him what we were doing and how we were proceeding. And he was, really very cooperative in the sense, I mean, jump to the end of the story, Caroline's been off the medication totally for a couple of months and is now completely back to her old self. And Caroline saw him this week and he's very keen to understand how he can get his patients off venlafaxine more easily, because when I said, well, how do you do it? He said, with extreme difficulty.
So how long did it take in all then, Malcolm?
Well, if we go back to Easter was when we'd come down by half, and so I decided that we'd have a month's consolidation before this weekend of going away, because I didn't want to precipitate a problem of immediately before we were going away for this weekend. It was such a milestone for us. But then after that time, with help from the GP, with a range of the smallest capsules, which are made in venlafaxine, and then the smallest tablet that we could then break up into different sizes each day as I adjusted it. I guess it took another month to come down from 75 milligrams twice a day to a 75 milligram capsule once a day. And then we had a holiday planned, so we went away on holiday and held it for a week. And then it took us, I guess, about another 5 or 6 weeks to bring it down to 0.